Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and I'm back with another episode of Spoiler Sundays. So this is the time of the week where I take a look at all of the spoilers that we had and, well, talk about them. So we have quite a lot of spoilers to go over. At least like almost a third of the set was revealed this week, just because it's getting really close to the Japanese release of BT10. So without further ado, let's just dive right in, because we have so many cards to talk about. First up, we have Senzumon. So Senzumon is going to be a level 5 yellow Digimon. Stats aren't anything too special. It has a pretty okay when Digivolving ability where one of the opponent's Digimon gains security attack -1 until the end of the opponent's turn. So we've seen this ability similar to Angelwomon all the way back in BT03, so it's not really anything too special, and it has a nice inheritable ability similar to that card, except it's not similar to that card because the ability is actually different, where it's a when attacking inheritable ability where once per turn, one of the opponent's Digimon gains security attack -1 until the end of the opponent's turn. So this card is just trying to constantly debuff the opponent's Digimon, so that way they won't be able to deal damage, and you could stack instances of security attack -1, just like you could stack security attack +1, so that way even if the Digimon is able to break out of it, you could probably apply some more debuffs, so it still won't be able to deal damage. And this is going to all play into what Venusmon wants to do, and Venusmon is going to be one of the SRs in the set, and Venusmon is a pretty interesting Digimon. So she is a level 6 yellow Digimon, and stats, again, nothing too special that we haven't seen, but she has two pretty solid abilities. Her first is a when Digivolving ability where all of the opponent's Digimon gain security attack -1 until the end of their next turn. So this is supposed to be played probably in combination with Senzumon to constantly try to debuff the opponent's Digimon. And her secondary ability is supposed to probably be played into her first ability, where all of the opponent's Digimon with the security attack debuff can't attack this Digimon, so it really limits their actions in terms of what she's allowing the opponent to do, especially since their when attacking and when evolving abilities also don't activate. So she is another control style of deck, trying to basically stunlock the opponent's Digimon from really wanting to be able to do anything, making her a pretty strong card to think about playing around with. I don't know how good her deck actually is going to be, but limiting the opponent's actions and turning off some of their abilities is usually a really strong thing. Next, we have an option card in the form of Healing Therapy. So Healing Therapy is going to be a 2-drop yellow option card that looks to be playing with what Venusmon is trying to do. Well, because it has Venusmon on the card art, but it's continuing with that security attack -1 sub-theme and interacting with Venusmon specifically. So this card has the main ability where it gives one of the opponent's Digimon security attack -1 until the end of the opponent's next turn, and then if you have a Venusmon in play, then you get to give 3 of their opponent's Digimon instead the security attack -1 debuff. So it's basically like a Holy Flame, except it's targeting more Digimon if you have Venusmon in play. Then it has a security ability to activate its main to try to stave off some of that damage. Next, we have Tutumon. So Tutumon is going to be a purple level 3, stats aren't anything too special, although it is interesting that it does have a hard play cost for 4 and it only has 1000 DP. But this is a Bagra army card, so it's going to interact with a lot of what Bagra army is trying to do, and that's going to be trying to control and manipulate some of the opponent's actions and limit it in, well, the Bagra army way that we've seen before. So what this card is doing more specifically is it has an on-play ability that's acting as a digging tool where you get to reveal the top 4 cards of your deck and add 1 Digimon with Bagra army in its traits, and 1 Amano from among them into your hand, and then the rest go to the bottom in any order. So that way he's looking for Bagra army cards and their tamer to, well, make the Bagra army deck as efficient as it possibly can. Then it has the on-delete ability of Save that we saw last week with all of those new mechanics, and it has an inheritable ability where during the opponent's turn, when this Digimon is trashed by a card effect, most of the time it's going to be from their own card effect because they're trying to use their abilities to stop some of the opponent's actions on the opponent's turn, to gain a memory to further control the opponent and limit some of their actions. Next up, we have Damemon. So Digimon is going to be a level 4 purple Digimon, and this is just playing along with what the Bagra army is trying to do, and it has an on-play ability and when Digivolving ability, giving it some extra versatility on how you could play it because it has different ways you could play it. where if you don't have an Amano card in play, then you get to play one from your hand for free. So this is just allowing you to be able to play the tamer that Shoutmon is going to be searching out. Then he himself has the on-delete ability of save, and the same inheritable that we saw on all of the other Bagra army cards. We do have a new option card for that purple Bagra army deck to take advantage of in the form of Bunbunken. So what this option is doing is it's a purple 2-cost option with the main ability where we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck and add a card with Bagra army and its traits from among them in our hand, and then trash the rest. And then we get to place one Digimon card with Bagra army and its traits from our trash underneath one of our tamers. So it's trying to basically do what Taiki was doing, where it's just trying to set up your tamer, so that way you could take advantage of whatever the tamer is going to be doing. But regardless, it also has the security ability where we get to play one Amano from our hand or trash for free, and then add this card into our hand. So it's just an easy way to try to get our tamer, which it looks like the tamers are going to be relatively important for these army-based strategies. Next up, we have Shoutmon Cross 5. So Shoutmon Cross 5 is going to be a red-black level 5 Digimon, and it could digivolve for 4 off of a level 4 red or black Digimon, which is a little bit expensive for a level 5, but not uncommon, considering it is 2 colors. It has 10,000 DP, which is on the larger side in terms of stats, and he hard plays for 10, but that's okay because you're trying to actually reduce his play cost because of the Digifuse or DigiXross ability. So what this card's abilities are is he natively has Security Attack +1, Blocker, and Material Save 3, and the Digifuse ability, which is going to entail using Shoutmon, Ballistamon, Darurumon, Starmons, and Sparrowmon. So it is just that step up from a Shout Cross 4, adding Sparrowmon into the mix and having a slew of new and powerful abilities. Next, we have Shoutmon Cross 5B. So Shoutmon Cross 5B is a pretty interesting Digimon with a whole bunch of ways that we want to play him. So obviously being Shout 5B, he wants to be played with Shoutmon Cross 5, and he also has the added benefit for his Digifuse ability to take advantage of Beelzemon as well. So I don't know if this means we're going to get a Cross Hearts Beelzemon. That would be cool if we did, but I'm not expecting one, considering we have a couple of other Beelzemons already in the game. But regardless, this card is a pretty strong card, being a red and purple level 6 that could digivolve off of red and purple level 5s for 4. He does have some really decent abilities. So first off, he has the blocker ability, so he's just a good defensive card, with the armor purge ability allowing him to basically revert back into whatever you digivolved on top of him or used to stack his inheritable sources with, depending on what you used to build up into him. So if you used the Digifuse ability on top of a Shoutmon Cross 5 and a Beelzemon, then he could revert back into one of those, or if you digivolved him off of one of those Digimon, then the armor purge will help revert them back to those as well. But regardless, he has a on-play and when digivolving ability, so you trigger this ability when you do one of those 2 actions, where you get to place one Digimon with Cross Hearts and its traits from your hand or underneath one of your tamers at the bottom of this Digimon's digivolution source. So it's just trying to increase his overall abilities based on the different inheritables that you could be playing around with that are in the Cross Hearts army. And on top of that, he also has an added bonus where if this Digimon has Beelzemon in its Digivolution source, then we get to play one level 4 or lower Digimon with Cross Hearts in its traits from our trash for free, thus trying to set up our field to do various other things with it, reusing some of our cards in new powerful ways, just because, well, getting free Digimon and getting free bodies is always a good thing. So I'm really excited to see what the rest of the Cross Hearts army is going to do to best support the Shoutmon Cross cards. Next up, we have a new version of Greymon. So yes, this Greymon is a blue Greymon, and his stats are pretty okay. He hard plays for 4, evos for 2, and has 4,000 DP, but he's meant to be played with the Blue Flare army, and he has an on-play ability, which probably supports his low play cost, where we get to reveal the top 4 cards of our deck and add 2 cards with Blue Flare army and its traits from among them into our hand. So it's just acting as the deck's dedicated digger for blue flares, and then it also has the added benefit where we get to place the remaining cards on the bottom of our deck, and if we have a Christopher in play, then we're going to return one MetalGreymon from our trash into our hand instead. So it's just allowing us to find lots of our parts and pieces and try to set up our big combo for whatever Christopher and the Blue Flare army is trying to do. Then he also has the on-delete ability of save, so that way he could go underneath said Christopher when he gets deleted to try to save him for later. And then he has the inheritable ability for the Blue Flare army to take advantage of with the DigiXross and evolutions, where it has a when attacking inheritable ability of once per turn. If this Digimon has Blue Flare army in its traits, and your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play, then you get to unsuspend this Digimon, doing a very classic blue thing at allowing you to be able to multi-swing. And speaking of MetalGreymon, we finally get to know what MetalGreymon is doing. So we get a new version of MetalGreymon. This time he is in blue to kind of line up with the Blue Flare army. He is a level 5 Digimon and has 8000 DP hard plays for 7, so he's a little bit more expensive, but that's okay because he has the Digifuse ability between Greymon and male Birdramon to try to make playing him a little bit easier. But he does have the material save ability and an on-play ability to take advantage of to, again, try to use the Digifuse ability to want to be able to play him. So his on-play ability states that this Digimon gains the rush ability for the turn. Then if you Digifused, 3 of the opponent's Digimon with a number of digivolution sources equal to or less than this Digimon can't attack or block until the end of the opponent's next turn. So it's just trying to do another very classic blue thing at trying to stunlock the opponent's Digimon, and this is primarily going to be targeting the low-level Digimon, preventing them from attacking or blocking. Next up, we have Christopher. So we finally know what Christopher is doing, and he actually isn't exactly like Taiki like I thought he would be. So he is actually going to be a 4-costed tamer that is going to be a memory-fixing tamer, on top of having the ability to play Digimon cards for their Digifuse requirements by suspending this tamer. You could also place a card from underneath this tamer to the bottom of one of your Digivolutions cards for Digifusing. So it is acting similar to Taiki in which he's trying to interact with the Digifuse ability, but unlike Taiki, he's not trying to set himself up, and he's just trying to set the deck up as a whole by being a memory-fixing tamer. Next up, we have Sparrowmon. So Sparrowmon is a black level 3 Digimon, and it actually does have Cross Hearts and Twilight in its traits, so Twilight is going to be another one of the armies that's going to be represented in the set. So what this card is doing is it has the ability where it could Digivolve for 0 on top of a level 2 with Cross Hearts in its trait, so it seems like it does kind of want to go more into the Cross Hearts deck, but it also interacts with Twilight cards, and a Twilight deck if you want to try building a Twilight deck. But what this card is doing is it also has a static ability where during all turns, if you have a tamer with Cross Hearts or Twilights in its traits, then this Digimon gets plus 3000 DP, acting as a level 3 with 5000 DP, which is on the stronger side, in case you want to try to be more aggressive with this card. Then on top of that, it has the on-delete ability of save, and the inheritable ability where during the opponent's turn, when this Digimon has Shoutmon or Minervamon in its name, then this Digimon gains the reboot ability, so it seems like a good card to want to be in both Twilight and Cross Heart decks. Next up, we have a new version of Blukamon. So this Blukamon is going to be a level 3 blue vanilla Digimon with a stat line of 2 to hard play, 2 to evo, and 5000 DP. So we've seen the stat line similar before in green and red and yellow, and it's just a part of that Rookie Rush-esque style of strategy where you just want to hard play really valuable and efficient rookies to try to be very aggressive with, and this card is just in that stat line. Next up, we have a new version of Regulocusmon. So Regulocusmon is going to be a blue level 6 Digimon. Stats aren't anything too special, but it does have 2 decent abilities. So it has a when Digivolving ability where you get to trash the bottom 2 sources of one of your opponent's Digimon, which is fairly average for a lot of blue decks that want to interact with source removal. And then it also has a when attacking ability where if the opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources in it in play, then you get to play 1 level 3 and 1 level 4 Digimon from this Digimon's Digivolution sources for free. So that's actually really powerful of a payoff to trying to get rid of the opponent's inheritable sources, is just spawning a wide field, so that way you could take advantage of spawning a wide field to do various other things with. Next up, we have Assaultmon. So Assaultmon is going to be a black level 5 Digimon. Stats aren't anything too special. It just has the stat line of 7 to hard play, 3 to evo, and 10,000 DP. It would have been nice to have this card actually be a D Brigade to try to support that deck a little bit more. I don't necessarily know if they needed this type of a card, but it wouldn't have hurt the D Brigade deck nonetheless. Try to flesh it out and give it new cards. Similarly to how Canondramon is also not a D Brigade, but it is actually part of the D Brigade army. So they might have a new version of these cards later that actually are D Brigades for when they want to upgrade that D Brigade deck next. But Canondramon, regardless, is a pretty okay level 6 Digimon to be playing around with. He is a blue and black level 6, and Digivolve off of blue and black level 5s for 4, and has 12,000 DP. He also has the blocker ability, so he's just a big body to try to stop some of the opponent's aggression, and he even has a nice when digivolving ability to unsuspend this Digimon, so you could also be aggressive with this card if you want to be. Then it also has another ability where during the opponent's turn, once per turn, when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon by battle, you get to unsuspend it, so that way it's just a really good card to use whether you're blocking or attacking to try to deal lots of damage onto the opponent and try to control and mitigate their field. Next up, we have a new version of Asuramon. So this version of Asuramon isn't anything too special. It's another vanilla card, but it has the stat line of being a red at level 5, hard playing for 7, evoing for 2, and having 8,000 DP. So it's just acting very similar to Bastimon that we saw before, just being a cheap card to evo for a level 5. Next up, we have Pale Volcamon. So Pale Volcamon is transitioning to red this time. He was black previously, and he's still just a pretty okay Digimon. He's very basic by having the when digivolving ability of Blitz, so that way when you digivolve into him, he could attack right away even if the memory goes over onto the opponent's side, which is a little bit awkward considering he does evo for 3, which is about average, and with a memory fixing tamer, about where you want to be, but it kind of seems like he wants to be played in combination with some option cards, so that way you could use the option on the level 5, digivolve into Pale Volcamon, and be able to swing with the boost from that option card thanks to the Blitz ability. Then his secondary ability is also very generic, where during your turn, this Digimon gets plus 2,000 DP, so he's actually 13 on base when you're swinging with him. Next up, we have DeckerGreymon. So DeckerGreymon is a pretty interesting card considering all the different ways that we have to play this card. So for being a blue level 5, we have the option to hard play him for 9 or potentially less by utilizing MetalGreymon and DeckerGreymon. And then on top of that, he also evos for 4 on top of a level 4, or evos for 2 on top of a level 5, and he has 10,000 DP with the Armor Purge ability. And he has a nice on-play and when digivolving ability, no matter which way we actually utilize the card. So his ability states that we may place one Digimon with blue flare in its traits from our hand or underneath one of our tamers to the bottom of this Digimon's digivolution source. Then if this Digimon has a DeckerGreymon in its digivolution source, one of the opponent's Digimon can't attack or block until the end of the opponent's next turn, acting as another really good way at trying to stunlock the opponent's Digimon from really doing anything, similar to how blue hybrids used to be playing. Next up, we have Minervamon. So Minervamon is going to be a purple level 6 Digimon. Stats are very average, and she has the retaliation ability native to her, so it's not like the opponent actually wants to attack into her, otherwise they're going to be losing whatever Digimon that they're swinging with. Then on top of that, she has a really powerful ability where during the opponent's turn, not limited to once per turn mind you, when your opponent plays a Digimon, you get to play a level 4 or lower purple Digimon from your trash without paying its memory cost, but it doesn't get any of its on-play abilities. But the fact that literally for the opponent just playing cards, you get benefits by playing cards of your own to build a very wide board state very easily, because if they need to play multiple cards, then you're going to get this ability off multiple times, and then going into your turn, you could do some very crazy things with this ability depending on the Digimon you're going to be setting up with it. Then on top of that, she even has an on-delete ability of her own for when the opponent is actually going to have to delete her, or she's just unfortunate enough to die in the security. When your opponent has 2 Digimon or less, you get to play a level 5 or lower purple Digimon card, or 1 Minervamon from your trash for free. So even when she's dying, you're still going to be getting a Digimon back, which is pretty good. Next up, we have Monimon. So Monimon is going to be a Twilight Crossheart level 2 for the Twilight and Crosshearts deck to take advantage of, and it has the nice inheritable ability where during all turns, while this Digimon has Twilight in its trait, then it gains plus 1,000 DP. So with this ability, it seems like it's just acting as a really solid DP boost for the Twilight deck. On top of the fact that we do have High Vision Monotamon as another Digimon to be playing around with that style of gameplay, where you could play it as a solid level 4, just because evoing for 2 on top of a level 3, it does have 7000 DP, acting very similar to what we saw with Blintmon. But we do have an alternate way to actually play this card for free if we take advantage of the DigiXross ability, where we want to be using 3 different Monotamons to make this card even more playable. Next up, we have Quetzalmon. So Quetzalmon is a very basic purple level 4 Digimon that just has the Armor Purge ability, so that way when it gets deleted, it'll just basically de-digivolve itself instead of getting deleted, making for a pretty sticky body. And then on top of that, we have Sandriamon. So Sandriamon is just a very basic purple level 5 that is going to be acting as that Groundramon and Monzamon that purple was kind of missing, evoing for 2 off of a level 4, which is pretty efficient for level 5, hard playing for 5, which is also pretty efficient for level 5, and only having 6000 DP as a result. Next up, we have another vanilla card in the form of Golemon. So this new version of Golemon is a black level 4 that hard plays for 5, evos for 1 on top of a level 3, which is efficient for level 4s, and has 5000 DP, so it has the same stats as Minervamon that we saw way back when in BT10. And then we have a new version of Gogmamon as, again, another vanilla card, so nothing too special about the card, outside of the fact that it's a black level 5 that hard plays for 5, so it's a little bit easier to hard play, and it evos for 3 on top of a level 4, which is about average, and has 8000 DP, so most of the time you just want to hard play this card just to get an easy level 5 out. Next up, we have a new version of Skullknightmon, and this time it's going to be Skullknightmon Mighty Axe mode. So this is a Twilight Digimon, so you could play this in that Twilight Army deck, but most likely this is going to be played with the Skull Knight stuff, just because the Skull Knight stuff is interacting very nicely with one another. So for a black level 4 Digimon, he hard plays for 4, which is probably going to be your more desired way to play the card, especially since he has the DigiXross ability where you could use Skull Knight and Deadly Axemon to make him even cheaper to hard play. But he evos for 3 on top of a level 3 if you just wanted to use him traditionally with 5000 DP. Then this card also is treated as both Skullknightmon and Deadly Axemon, similar to how Cavalier mode was all the way back in BT8, and he has a good on-play ability where we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, and add a card with Knightmon in its name, Deadly Axemon, or Nene from among them into our hand, and then trash the remaining cards. Then if we Digicrossed with 2 materials, then we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 4 or less. So it's just acting as a really good digging tool for that style of deck, and helping try to find the Tamer is also pretty good for the Twilight version of the deck, just because we know Skullknightmon and Deadly Axemon are very easy cards to keep around, thanks to DarkKnightmon's ability. And speaking of DarkKnightmon, we get another version of DarkKnightmon, who also is a Twilight-type Digimon. So what this card is doing, it's a black level 5 that evos for 4 on top of a level 4, which is a little bit more expensive, but it does have a hard play cost of 8 and has 7000 DP, and obviously wants to be Digicrossed because it has an on-play ability to be used in combination with Skullknightmon and Deadly Axemon to help set this card up. And it has a good on-play ability to want to be Digicrossed with, so that way one of the opponent's Digimon de-digivolves 1, then if you Digicrossed or Digifused with 2 materials, then you get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 5 or less, so it's just more removal for doing literally what Skullknightmon and Deadly Axemon wants to do, and that's be a part of DarkKnightmon. And then on top of all of that, he does have another really good all-turns ability, where when this Digimon would be deleted, by returning one level 4 or lower black Digimon from this Digimon's Digivolution source back to our hand, we get to place a Skullknightmon or Deadly Axemon in its name from our Digivolution source for free. So it's essentially trying to keep a Skull Knight or Deadly Axe on the field, acting as another very sticky body, which is something similar to what the previous version of DarkKnightmon was doing before. Next up, we have a new version of Renamon. So it looks like Renamon is getting some support in the set that's going to be interacting with the EX2 version very nicely. So what this card is doing is it has an on-play ability where we get to check the top 4 cards of our deck, add 1 card with plugin in its name, and or yellow tamer from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So it's looking for the plugins, which are all 2-cost option cards of various colors that we could use as long as we have our yellow tamer, and it also is helping look for the yellow tamer to be able to use our plugins even easier with, which is kind of how the new version of Renamon wants to play. Then it has a nice inheritable ability where during your turn, once per turn, when you use an option card that costs 2 or more, then one of the opponent's Digimon gets minus 2000 DP. So it's just a good card to play in complements with a lot of option cards, mainly the plugins that the deck is trying to look for. Next up, we have a new version of Cubimon, which is, again, trying to flesh out that Renamon line from EX2 and add more utility to it by playing around with plugins. So what this card is doing is it has a nice when digivolving ability where we get to activate one of the following abilities. So having some utility on this is really nice because the 2 abilities we want to take advantage of is either we get to return an option card with plugin in its name from our trash to our hand to reuse said plugins, or we get to trash an option card with plugin in its name to draw 2 cards. So it's a really good ability to help flesh out its synergy and interactions with plugins as a whole. Next, we have a new version of Shoutmon that's, again, trying to flesh out this new Renamon line and its interactions with plugins. It has a nice when digivolving ability where we get to use 1 option card with plugin in its name from our hand and ignore its color requirements without paying its cost. So it's just allowing us to use a free plugin, whether we have a tamer or not on our field, to make our plugins even more useful for when we are caught in those situations where we don't have a tamer, to be able to use our plugins. And the fact that it's playing the plugin for free just makes it a really good card to synergize with lots of different plugins. But speaking of plugins, we actually got a new plugin in the form of Strength Plugin O. So Strength Plugin O is a white option that costs 2, no shocker there considering it's a plugin and that's just kind of been the average cost of a lot of plugins, and it has the classic plugin ability where while we have a tamer in play, we could use this card by ignoring its color requirements. And it has the main ability where one of your Digimon gains plus 3000 DP until the end of the opponent's next turn. So this buff does persist through the opponent's turn, so it makes your Digimon a little bit harder to interact with just because of that persistent buff. Then on top of that, its security ability allows you to gain a memory and add this card into your hand, so that way when it's checked in the security, you're still able to utilize this card. Even though we do have some plugin recursion in the deck, it's still a good card to have because also gaining that 1 memory means that you could take away that memory from the opponent, and that could be pretty valuable for the opponent depending on the state of the game. But yeah, that's kind of all of the spoilers that we had this week. We had like a third of the set spoiled this week, so I'm expecting that they're just going to power through and spoil lots of cards next week as well until the set is basically fully spoiled, so that way when Japan gets a BT10, they're all prepared and know exactly what's going to be in the set. And I'm really excited to see what else is in the set, just because the set seems like it has a lot of cards to be thinking about playing around with in various different ways for various different decks. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.